welcome back to the channel. My name is Robin and today I'm very stoked and thrilled to announce to you such a skillful guest. Today I'm here with David Corcoran. David is a former professional opera singer in the Sydney Opera House and now turned into an emotional intelligence and communication skills coach based in Vienna. Now David combines his mastery of the stage together with deep psychological frameworks and teaches professionals how to actually use physical tools like vocal intelligence and body posture to regulate your internal world. Now, David, there are so many things that I can unpack here with you because you have such a broad portfolio. But before we dive in, could you maybe share a little bit of background information with my audience before we kick anything off and how you got to this point in your career?
Sure. Well, yeah, thank you firstly for having me, Robin, on the channel. And it's wonderful to meet your viewers, or at least to influence your viewers in a positive way. So yeah, I became an opera singer at around 23. So prior to that, I had studied my bachelor degree, thinking I was going to be an organizational psychologist. And basically, I transitioned. I switched. I found the thing that really lit me up and was something that I was really good at. And so very quickly, I advanced through my career. But then I pivoted again when we got here to Europe 11 years ago, and I realized that I could bring the best from the stage into everyday life for people. So then that way, executives, now students, so I'm now a lecturer at Hochschule Burgenland, which is another pivot that I've made in the last couple of years, because I see now the opportunities are to help younger people to really thrive and grow in their career. So rather than having to take 10, 12 years in your career to find those vocally intelligent steps, to use your hands in a positive way or have your body language really support your message, we can shortcut that through the work and the life that I've led so far.
That's incredible. And just out of curiosity, because I can bet like it is such a transition going from being an opera singer to being a coach in many kind of like different industries. What was one thing that scared you the most in that transition, and how did you use it to become that coach that you needed to be?
Sure. I've always believed in doing things, not just, there wasn't a clean cut, I think is the best, shortest answer. So it wasn't like, right, I'm going to be a coach now, and then I stopped doing opera. There was sort of a gradual wind down as these other activities were winding up. So it was actually in 2012, I think, or 2011, that I decided to become a coach. I was a full-time opera singer, and I thought, I want to do a little bit of this on the side. And so I took my training, which is usually a couple of years to be an ICF accredited coach. And so when I arrived in Europe, I was like, well, okay, let's see where the green lights are. The green lights at that time weren't for me in opera. I tried out for a few auditions. I also changed voice type, so I sang as a tenor professionally at Opera Australia, at the Sydney Opera House. And then I had new teaching here where the teacher advised me, and I also had a lesson with a famous Helden tenor who said to me, you're a high baritone. So I had to make a choice. Do I want to spend now years learning new repertoire to be a high baritone, or do I want to take this opportunity to see how I could pivot and use my coaching skills and degree and diploma in a new direction? So I had studied really professional coaching to be more of a life coach or a lifestyle coach or a career coach. But then I pivoted and saw, well, actually bring my native English skills to Europe. And I had done the CELTA course to be a foreign language trainer as, again, a little upskill in my first journey here in Europe, because I thought, well, people are always going to want perhaps to converse with me or improve their English. So could I be helpful there? Did I enjoy that? And then I started to realize when I was coaching people in companies as a language coach that, in fact, this was akin to being on stage. If you've got 90 minutes with a group of 10 executives or 10 people in production, you don't want to waste their time. You've got to get in there and you've got to make it snappy, make it work. And what I discovered is that many people had the experience, especially here in Austria, of growing up learning English by rote, learning English through stress, through the perfection element. It's got to be perfect. If it's not perfect, I'm not speaking English. And I could ease their minds and say, hey, we're here to have some fun. We're here to enjoy the process of learning, and how can we do that in a positive environment? So I started to see that there was a performance element to what I was bringing, which I had from the opera and could not manipulate, but could certainly bring about through emotions.
And also lower the threshold a little bit for the ones interacting with you, right? Because as you said, it kind of like be nervous to interact, and maybe it was English and how to go to that certain level that they think they should be. But then their threshold can kind of like be pretty big and daunting, and at the same time you provided kind of like safe space for them
100%.
to lower that threshold. And to touch upon that, because it's really interesting, because you said you bring that performance of the stage into class. Talking about body language here, what exactly is body language and how can we use it to actually have a better quality of life?
Yeah, so what I've really seen is that, and this is now really the last 11 years, so of course in the opera, you're given a character and you have to portray that character. Now that comes with, therefore, body language. So if you're being a soldier, playing a soldier, how does a soldier stand? So that you then watch and observe. This is where my psychology skills came in, the power of observation. So I would look and watch on YouTube or from my experiences, I draw on that. And then a good director will help bring out those nuances. So it might be a bit of tension in the hand or the fingers, or it might be the way you hold the gun. We had experts who would work with us about weapons and how to hold them, so you didn't look like you were holding a toy gun. Same if you were having to act a smoking scene. How do you smoke a cigarette? How do you hold it? So sometimes we can draw from our own experience, but in terms of then applying that, what I've seen is that when we're speaking, we're using our hands usually quite well, quite easily. And so body language is nothing more than recognizing what am I projecting into the world. And the way I've been able to help my clients and students is to recognize that when you want to improve your English, improve your body language, because often the two are paired, unconsciously and consciously. So a lot of movements that we have are unconscious. And so when I'm coaching one-on-one with people, I'm looking for those things that are annoying, maybe twirling the hair for a woman, or touching your face too much as a man, or maybe you have a nervous tic or something that you're doing there. But for most people, once they get over that, it's really about what am I communicating? And I realize there's a power between combining your voice and vocal variety with the word choice that you're using, with the emotions that you're feeling, this is the emotional intelligence, to then find, and this will all impact the way you use your hands and your body. And so I often share with people, remember, you are, in a sense, a musical instrument. From head to toe, you are the instrument. So you're not playing this, you're enacting this. So really to help people, as I say, if it's a speech or a presentation or just improving daily English, it's almost like, well, let's act it out. And a lot of people might say to me, well, that feels like I'm faking it till I make it. And this is a popular term, but I've realized, I had an aha the other day, I'm not faking it, I'm feeling it. There's a big difference there. Because when we feel it, so this is where my training and when I arrived in Vienna, about a year later, I started my emotional intelligence journey to add that to my coaching portfolio. And so what I understood is that when we feel something, then often the hands do what they need to do. The voice does what it needs to do. So it's sort of like an inside-out approach. You can change the feeling to change the body language. Or, as I just described, you change the body language. I'm playing the soldier now, or I'm acting as the CEO. Change the body language, which will also change the feeling.
So kind of like mirroring, copying someone who feels in that certain state.
Yes.
And then internally, kind of like biochemical-wise,
yes,
you start to also feel that internal shift. So interesting question, because I also have a couple of questions from my community actually, which are quite interesting. And one of those questions was, when let's say you walk into a high-pressure room, and you feel very nervous to maybe go into the room, maybe because there's a meeting going on that you don't want to get into, how can you still maintain authority while still conveying the message and not feeling too stressed about what it is that you're going to say using your body language?
So I guess two things come to mind here that you should think about. Who am I talking to? What does my audience need or command? So if it's a high pressure board situation, well, go in wearing your best shoes, your best suit, your best outfit, make sure you look good, feel good, and try to cultivate. So we can have mixed feelings. So I can be nervous, yes, for this opportunity, but I might also be excited to share my new project. So you have to balance that out. Now there's a concept in emotional intelligence called name it to frame it. So I'm not going to walk into the board and say, guys, I feel really nervous, this is my first time. But talk to a good friend, talk to your coach, write to your spouse, write to someone else in your life and say, I feel a little bit nervous about this upcoming situation. Now, if your friend is a good friend, they might say, well, what else are you feeling? And you could say, well, actually, I'm also feeling excited to share the new project that I've been working on. Now the question might be, what's the balance of that? Well, I'm 25% nervous and I'm 75% excited, or vice versa. So then the next step might be, well, okay, what else can you do to help yourself? Well, I know personally, we have this podcast today. I rode my bike here. It's only 8 minutes on the bike, but enough for me to feel energized.
Yeah. So you kind of activate yourself.
Activate, and I'm using the energy. So see, nervousness, the excitement is just energy, neurochemicals. And so basically, how are we able to move those? So people get stuck when they do that. And the other thing, the second thing to think about is when they walk into that space, so besides who am I talking to and what do they need, is, okay, what can I do in the moment? Because I think that's really the key.
Yes.
It's really the first 10 seconds of the speech. It's the walking into the room. And I had lots of experiences walking in to do an audition. They don't know you, you don't know them. There's a piano in the middle of the room. You've got to walk in and they say, what do you want to sing first? You say, I'd like to sing Die Spielen ist bezaubernd schön from Die Zauberflöte, or something like that. Okay, away you go. And then, ba-bum, bum, ba-bum, bum, and then you sing. Straight in. Okay. And so you don't have time to charm your audience, to warm up, to shake a hand.
Don't dabble.
It's very clinical, very clinical. Okay. So maybe in the business sense, to your audience viewer there, maybe go in and shake hands. Look for the person on the other side of the room that you do know and walk straight up to them and say, Robin, great to see you, it's David, And then you get that ball rolling. I don't know everyone here. Hi, I'm David, So you're playing again, you're feeling the confidence, you're not faking it, you're feeling the confidence in order to make that best impression.
You kind of like set yourself up for a good meeting or a high pressure room, because if you kind of like know the unknown, then the fear tends to maybe fade a little bit, or get a bit more comfortable with it, right? Like
that's
kind of like making friends with discomfort is something I like to say always. And oftentimes people, maybe shy away from making friends with discomfort, but I think that's where it happens.
Yeah.
And another question that I got, because let's say, if you walk into that high pressured room, sometimes even though you did all of these steps, people forget to breathe. They just kind of like feel in the chokehold, like they maybe cannot, share the thing that they want to share, because their breath is just, cannot make way for the things that they want to say. Hence has an effect on their nervous system too. How can they command their body to still make it able to combine a breathing exercise, or maybe any breathing framework at all, with feeling that you have that authority and also internal command of your body?
Yeah, breathe through your nose. Try it now. And you see your belly starts to move. As you just said that, so I'm also feeling like higher in breath, having this first time experience with you. I'm not just uncomfortable, but there's always that element of wanting to do well. And so even just you say, I just noticed it, you said, talk about breath, and my body went, like I'm sitting in a spa.
Yeah, so because now we make the space to do so.
Make the space, exactly. So it's like, you're talking, I can breathe. So maybe if I'm in that room, how are you, John? And as you're listening, your mouth can be quiet, you can breathe through your nose, and then let the air get nice and low in your body. So this is something that, maybe in the beginning you need to train.
Yeah, definitely.
There are other situations where you might just go sniff, sniff, sigh. This comes from Andrew Huberman, a well-known guy on Instagram and so forth. But now I can't say, John, how are you? And do that. But maybe if I'm setting up my tech before my presentation, or I'm preparing the room, or doing something else, or I'm sitting at the back of the room listening to the other speaker, I can just quietly. So what we're trying to always get is get the breath down. When we're uncomfortable, the breath gets high. And as you said, choking. So if you're feeling choked, then you're really at an extreme. So then you ought to also pay attention to your posture. So if your shoulders are over your hips and maybe your feet are flat on the ground like we're sitting now, then we're in the best possible way of position to allow our breath and our stomachs to relax. But if you're wearing tight-fitting clothing because you're trying to impress by having big muscles or whatever, which I've seen a lot of young people do, you know, and it's fine, but it's fine for the club.
Yeah.
It's not fine for the boardroom or the presentation environment or your bachelor defense of your degree or something like this. So go in with nice-fitting clothing that can expand, that can be comfortable, can breathe. If your pants are too tight, that's going to cause you distress. So breathing through the nose, therefore. And what does that do? It warms the air as it goes in. You could breathe through your mouth, but you're getting a shot of cold air to the back of your throat. It's more likely to make you want to grab a drink of water or to cough. So breathing through the nose. Now we did it really consciously and obviously, but of course there's subtle ways to just do that.
Yeah, definitely.
And then pay attention to where is the tension? It's in my shoulders. Okay, let them go. So you can do a body, heart, mind scan. Mm-hmm. Start with the body. Okay, where do I feel tension in my body? I feel it in my hand right now. Okay, I'll just relax the hand. I'm not going to shake it out, but I can just relax. Okay, now my knee feels funny. Okay, good. Or my shoulder or my neck. So you could be sitting in the boardroom, sitting in the presentation environment, in the theater, wherever, and just paying attention to that. And if you get the breath nice and low.
Because what I immediately noticed, like now we made space for it, but especially with this interview right now, I also noticed that when I came into the room, I was high in energy, enthusiastic, but also you can direct that energy a bit more consciously when you take that step. And now that we just did that, I feel way more focused, also way more focused and grounded in this conversation too, because we made just a space for it.
Yeah.
And to turn the page a little, in combination with the breathing frameworks that we just got here, I also know that you teach vocal intelligence. First of all, what is vocal intelligence for the people who do not know that? But also, what are maybe 3 criteria that people should look at when you're actually enabling yourself with vocal intelligence?
So vocal intelligence is really about, can I say the right thing in the right place at the right time in the right way? So we've all had experiences where something felt a little bit off. Our speech didn't land with the audience. There was no resonance. And so we have to remember, what do my audience want to hear? So when I'm vocally intelligent, I'm focused less on myself, but on my audience. Yeah. We always think about what do we want them to know. So the first real tip here is, but focus on what you want them to feel. And this goes back to our emotional intelligence. So vocal intelligence says, right, this is a podcast for your viewers who are younger, who are wanting some wisdom and advice so that they don't have to take years and years to go through the same traps to arrive at the same place. So vocal intelligence says, if I'm going in for a job interview, how old are the people? What do they do? What's their background? If I'm talking to a CEO, for instance, they like short, sharp communication. Notice what happened to my voice? Yeah. Short, sharp communication.
You kind of like almost
chop with my body language, bang. But if I'm talking to an audience like in my Toastmasters club, or I'd love to be a TEDx speaker one day. So if I'm trying to inspire and motivate people, then I want moments of being slow and low. And I might say it's really important that we be here now. And so I'm giving a different feeling to my voice. And that comes from, like we said before, inside out, outside in. So really the first thing to remember is, how do I want my voice to sound, or how fast or slow, how high or low am I using my voice? Then secondly, vocal intelligence is about the word choices that we have. So it's about, I can say, hi guys, how you going? And that might be what you need for your introduction before. It's very nice and energetic, fast words. So if you watch that back, you'd hear boom, 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 great guys, and so boom. But that's what we expect of a podcast. A podcast doesn't start with saying, hi, welcome everyone. I mean, a sleepy meditation soundtrack would have that feeling. So again, now with words, some words are shorter, therefore faster, and some words are longer. So I often characterize hi guys with hello everyone and welcome. Hello everyone and welcome. The amount of seconds that takes is just twice as long as hi guys. So again, there's a different feeling that comes with that. So you can manipulate your words in order, or choose your words wisely in order to empower your audience to feel something based on what you perceive that you want them to feel. Vocal intelligence basically then says, we have 3 different ways of speaking. I can say, hello, my name is David. Hello, my name is David. Hello, my name is David. 3 styles. Your intelligence says which one matches that audience in which way now. So for me, I am an English speaker, so of course, I'm referring to the English language here.
Yeah.
But as an example, here we are in Vienna, and a lot of people, when you go into the shops, as foreigners, they say, Grüß Gott, Grüß Gott. Hear it? It goes down, Grüß Gott, and it sounds like a punch, punch. So if I walk in and I didn't know that that's culture here in Vienna, I might say, wow, that person is so rude. And being from Australia, or if you're from America, or if you're from maybe an Anglo country where you expect a little bit more, hi, how's your day going? Can I get you anything? And I don't know, it's like where you're from, but you expect, and we go through, so you're confronted with this, and you might say, hello, and you feel confused. And so the point being, that's a downward inflection. I've often challenged Austrians to say, well, why can't we say, Grüß Gott? And they look at me funny, because
exactly.
it's cultural now, a playful way,
yes.
Exactly. And it was Chris Voss who highlighted this playful way even in negotiations. So in his book, Never Split the Difference, he talks about 3 types of voice. He talks about the radio DJ voice, which is very low and very breathy, which might be good in some cases. Then he talks about the direct, assertive style, which you could imagine, if you're negotiating in a hostage situation, give me the guns or else. Release the hostages now. What does that do? That gives pushback immediately.
Yeah, it's not
but what
inviting at
he
all.
then advised, the 3rd style of voice, was this playful one. The playful kind of, well, all right, now, maybe you could give us the guns. I don't know what he was doing and talking about, but I think this playful voice is the one that when we're walking into the boardroom, hi, good morning, everyone. How are you today? Or, wow, we're all here, fantastic.
Kind of a little bit of excitement and curiosity.
That's it, bringing the curiosity. And then I always ask people, this comes now into emotional intelligence, where I'll say, to a classroom of students, hi everyone, how are you today? And then I listen. I'm listening. I'm looking at the body language. I'm looking for the feedback. So if students have already had 2 classes, they're like, I'm fine, I'm here, and you go immediately, okay, where is this? We had a first connection through the university system, and there's an absolute difference in the sense of your class was full of international Erasmus students versus the local students, because you were here for this 6-month opportunity. You were eager and interested and curious to find out how a university system runs in Vienna, in Austria. Definitely. And so therefore, you bring a whole different attitude. So I can draw on that when I pay attention to that. Say, right, what can I do with that? So I don't need to perform and provide all the energy if there's already good energy in the room. And so therefore you start to bring in that in to create that psychologically safe space and that great environment.
In your opinion, since you're talking about vocal intelligence, what do you see through your lens when coaching people or in your classes? What are maybe 3 bottlenecks that people are not maybe looking into the most when using their vocal intelligence or want to use their vocal intelligence?
So they haven't recorded themselves, so they don't actually know how they sound. And most people speak in a neutral tone, so this sort of monotone, especially German speakers, for instance, because in their language, a lot of the tone is monotone. So it's okay to say, Grüß Gott, wie geht's dir? Wie geht's dir? And it's all on, wie geht's dir? It's for them, it's too much. Don't do that, it's too dramatic.
You're crazy, like what are you doing?
Yeah, you're crazy, exactly. So you have to learn, therefore, which tones. But if we're speaking English, therefore we do want to change that tone. So you're not trying to be American or Australian, you're trying to use your voice in a way that brings an effect on people. And this is the way where, in a 3-hour class or in a 90-minute session or even a 20-minute speech, you want to make sure that you have the vocal variety. Because it's also not okay to have the whole time up, hi guy, hi. It sounds very Tony Robbins. And everyone's sort of crazed at the same time. So people could really afford to recognize their own basic tone, like which one are they using most of the time, and then work on the extremes. And you have to go to the extremes in order to come back to the middle. So sometimes I'll say, right, do it again, and I get them to do it 5 times. And then by the 5th time, they're like, oh, okay, and then they have to say something.
Like
they have to think, because we just easily get into patterns. Our brains love patterns, and so we have to recognize that we all have a basic pattern. I too have basic patterns. Now maybe they suit the dynamic environment to be the bubbly presenter, who brings energy. But if I do that all the time, then maybe the students get bored of that too. So I always have to think about times where I might change that tone. So if it's about an exam or an assignment, change the tone. Bring back the level of seriousness that the moment commands. And so it's really about knowing, this is again coming back to that idea of right place, right time, saying the right thing in the right way. This is built on kairos, which is part of the trivium, which is part of Aristotle's, ethos, pathos, logos. When you get ethos, pathos, and logos right, the credibility, the emotion, and the logic, you get kairos in the middle, which is saying the right thing at the right time.
Yeah.
But I've added in the right way, vocally. So that's the vocal intelligence part, and the emotional intelligence part, and the cultural intelligence part. So if you're not aware of those three intelligences as you're coming into a situation, you're either you're blinding yourself, or you're blinkering yourself, and then you might wonder, why am I not resonating with my audience?
So if someone would start, they could start there. That's like 100%. A good foundation to have a basis for intelligence.
Who am I talking to? Where are they from? What are their needs? How can I inspire them? What vocal tone would suit this environment?
Amazing. Now I got last two questions from our community. So when someone feels completely overwhelmed internally, but they need to project outward confidence, right? How do they alter their tone and pace in their voice so that they still listen to their feelings, but not feel internally pressured to be a certain way?
They should warm up their voice. So that's as easy as you're coming here. I got here early today and was just doing some warm-ups. I mean, I do singing warm-ups, but a basic warm-up is just Now this is also Someone says something good. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, vocalize. Even if that vocalization is just So I like to encourage people to use ooh. Just mix those two.
It's so interesting that you mentioned it, because we were just I was just like literally out front of the door. I was literally practicing the introduction as well. Like I did it yesterday too, like repetition. But the reason I did that is because I want to get much more comfortable, so that when the moment arises,
yes,
I know exactly what I want to say, how I want to say it, and which tone I want to put in there. You know what I mean? So it's quite interesting that you touch upon that point too, because that is exactly how I think you can also kind of like, command that room, but still listen to your feelings, because although there might be, excitement, maybe some nervousness, it is kind of like curious excitement, in my opinion.
That's it.
But you also lay the foundation for a much more comfortable session, because you already know how you're going into the place.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I think that's one of the most crucial things that I think will be really helpful for anybody out there to start.
Yeah.
So
can I add one thing?
Yeah,
so my first singing teacher, John Lander, said to me, get up 3 hours before. So if you have we had a 9:30 event this morning, so I got up at 6:30.
Yeah, same.
Because I give myself, my voice, that 3 hours to talk. So if you haven't spoken, maybe you live alone or whatever, so you need to talk to yourself, you need to vocalize, you need to talk to the dog, you need to do whatever in order to have that moment. Go to the local coffee shop, like I did this morning on the way, get my coffee, enjoy that, and have a little chat to the barista. These small moments then help your voice to feel oiled, and to also check in, like what's happening with my breath and what's happening with my voice. This room is perfect for my voice because I can hear the resonance.
Yeah.
But if I might go into a workplace where I'm in a small meeting room, and these corporate rooms are often dull in sound, they suck the sound out, so suddenly I have to readjust my voice and just make sure that I'm heard, but also not shouting at that person either. Do you know what I mean? So tempering my volume, thinking about my pitch, and doing some exercises as you were doing, in whichever way, practicing the introduction, practicing parts of your speech, not then thinking, oh my God, I've got to get this right. Because the other thing that I learned from Jerry Wiseman, a speech coach who wrote this wonderful book about presenting, is that it's not about memorizing, it's about verbalizing. So what this means to verbalize is, okay, I've got my notes, I've rehearsed, I've practiced. Now, the way I say that in this instance may not be exactly what I wrote down. And I try to encourage students now not to write out speeches. Write out key points, words, build a framework, build a mind map, draw on different things as we're doing now. You're asking me questions, I'm drawing on my mind map of my experience. Now, there's tons of stuff in there that we won't get to today, but it's all there. And should I need it, trigger, boom, there's a story. And I can extract that. So focus on the mind map before you go in order to know, right, I've got plenty. I don't have to work, because often when we feel overwhelmed in these situations, it's because we don't feel that we're enough. And that's a psychological thing as well. We all deal with that. So recognize that we are enough, recognize that we are in the right place at the right time, and it's our job now to say things coming back to the right way. Do you see?
Yeah, there are so many things, like I really wanted to, pull that thread, and it's so incredible to know, because there are so many different topics that are so interesting. But the last question I really want to get down is that someone asked me, how can you present yourself professionally without creating a personality that is not authentically yours? Because I think one thing that I noticed as well, like especially when growing up, high school, I also needed to present, but I was very scared to do that. So I put out this character that was maybe enough for that moment, but completely out of line with how I would like to be.
Yeah.
So what would you say to that person that maybe deals with the same situation?
Well, it comes back to that phrase that I used at the start here. Faking it till you make it is something that Amy Cuddy talked about in her TED Talk, but I'm not faking it, I'm feeling it. So authenticity happens over time. I often then, when people say that to me in coaching, I say, do you think that I was always an opera singer? I had to build the identity of an opera singer. So I had to recognize, okay, and that for me meant moving from Melbourne to Sydney. I started my singing journey in Melbourne, where I'd been David, the bachelor student, the son of Graham, the person who lived and went to St. Kevin's, and all that history. When I moved to Sydney to start in the opera school, before joining Opera Australia, I could get rid of that identity and build David the tenor. So people didn't care where I was from. They're like, which voice type are you? Oh, I'm a tenor. What arias do you sing? Oh, I sing these. Oh, great. Cool, come to class, come do this. Worked with my singing teacher. Right, how do we get your voice working? Now, that wasn't an instant change. During those years, I was forming the identity. I was also going to the opera and looking at what do opera singers do? How do they operate? How do they sound? And then slowly, step by step, I was building that. So for someone who transitions from being a student, a bachelor student, into their first job and career, that's what an internship is for. The internship is that 3 to 6 months where you're suddenly having to dress up nicely. You're going in every day. You're working 40 hours a week. You're recognizing that you've got an hour for lunch. You just can't just do whatever you want. You've got jobs to do. You've got tasks to fulfill. And whether you get a lot of autonomy or a little bit of autonomy is up to the internship. Maybe you have a micromanaging boss. You go, oh, that's a great experience. So therefore, when you then start your professional journey, you might then realize, I've now gone from that. Just as you transition from high school student to university student. A lot of people in that first 6 months, they feel a bit lost because there's not teachers telling them what to do. The lecturer walks in, delivers, walks out. It's your job to be responsible for your learning. How are you going to learn? Do you take notes? Do you record the class? Do you use AI tools and get a meeting summary? All of that's available to people, but they have to take on the new identity, don't they? So to remain authentic, you have to decide what's in your journey. Which shoes will you wear? Don't just wear the shoes I tell you to wear. Wear the shoes you want to wear for that next level. I heard from a student the other day a Nigerian proverb who said, people address you the way you dress. So the people speak to you the way you dress. So therefore, the first step maybe for that identity change and to be authentic is to say, well, okay, I'm going into a corporate environment. How will I dress? Don't necessarily copy everyone. Look at the standard and then say, right, how will I dress? Yeah, whereas kind of like you need to make a product of your own conclusion, right? Yeah. So maybe pick what's presented in the corporate world. Yeah. Pick your own fashion style. And somewhere in the middle. And somewhere in the middle, take that step. Now see then how people respond. And then same with your approach to presenting, your approach to your work ethic. You could go into an environment where, I've been a kind of go guy all of my life. Now, fortunately, in my new position as a lecturer, I can relax a little bit because I don't have the impending deadlines. I don't have the people calling saying, I need this now, or can you jump in on Friday? My semester is planned. Yeah. And it's kind of a new journey for me to step into, that no one's beating down the door to say, have you marked all those assignments yet? Or why haven't you done the thing? You know, and so I can go, I have space to breathe here, you know, in my late 40s now. And it took like a good semester or two in this more faculty, I'm now faculty at Hochschule Burgenland, to recognize, okay, like there's not a crisis in the corner. The world is not on fire. And I'm that personality that's had those fires that I'm just continually fighting and putting out. But I'm only doing myself a disservice, you see. So authenticity can also say, right, how can I adjust? How can I keep tweaking who I am? And slowly, step by step, you evolve into that character. So I became the opera singer. The other thing is that if you're doing that professionally, you have to wait for the market to catch up. Mm-hmm. So when I rebranded myself as an executive voice coach, maybe 8 years ago now when I started my business, people were like, you're the language teacher, aren't you? You go, no, I'm the executive voice coach. But aren't you the opera singer? And so sometimes they get sort of mixed. So I meet some people say, how's the opera going? Well, I'm not singing professionally anymore. It's part of my story now, but it's not my identity. Yeah. And so I know that it had worked because recently, maybe a year ago, at a Christmas party, a colleague of mine said, so how does an opera singer become a lecturer? Do you see? And so they were now focused on that part of my journey.
Because it was a big part of the journey, but it's
absolutely
not who you are right now.
Not who I am now.
Right?
But she really helped me to recognize, because everyone prior to that would ask you these questions of like, how was it to become an opera singer? But it was wonderful that she recognized I'm no longer, and she sees my identity. She knows me as the lecturer, not as the opera singer. Yeah, exactly. But of course, when I go home to Australia for a period, catch up with old friends, they don't know where I'm at either. So they're sort of stuck in the opera identity, or they might say, what are you singing these days? Or I know you got out of singing, what are you doing? They don't really know and haven't seen the shift. So coming back to something like LinkedIn, now my inquiries are about emotional intelligence. But it's not just emotional intelligence, which I was doing in the last 5 years. Now I've moved into emotional intelligence and lecturing and other things, you see.
It's a combination of skills now.
Yeah.
You kind of like almost make your own subject in that sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So fewer people on LinkedIn contact me saying, you're an opera singer, great. They contact me saying, you're a coach and you do this, this and that. And that's great. I still keep my business alive with my emotional intelligence, vocal intelligence, and language intelligence, the English language. So I'm helping people in these three key areas outside of my work in soft skills and business communication at the university. But it's all the same. It's not like I'm doing yoga over here and doing, law over here. Like there's a parallel between the two. Exactly. And I realize now in my late 40s that there's a red thread that connects everything. And so for younger people who are starting out, I'm coaching this week some bachelor students, some of who say, my bachelor degree means nothing where I'm from, or I'm finding that people don't understand the topic or something. I go, that's interesting. Well, what can you draw from your degree that's relevant to those people? Yeah. So you've got to draw the connection for them. But there's maybe some disappointment, like I've just spent 3 years studying this and now I can't get a job in this area, for instance. You say, okay, but it's not the end of the road here. You're only starting your career. Where might you be in 10 years? You may have done a master's, you may have worked a little bit, but 10 years is not a long time in the overall sense of things. I think it was Tony Robbins who said we often overestimate what we can do in 1 year, but we underestimate what we can do in 5. So therefore, where could you be in 10? Yeah. Which identity have you created by then?
Totally. I think this is like really valuable for the audience right here, so thank you for the answer. And one thing that is really interesting, because I wanted to move into the topic of emotions. And one thing that I notice daily, also with the people that I'm interacting with, the interviews that I'm having, peers that I'm encountering, every time where there's a topic about emotions, often when I encounter people and I'm getting into a conversation, people often think about the nice weather questions, like how's it going, how do you feel? One question that I tend to ask, hey, what is something exciting that happened to you last week? But also what is something you look forward to for the upcoming week? And they look at me with this baffled look like, are you crazy? What makes it that people find it very difficult, especially the younger generation, to feel that if you're asking these questions, they feel it's kind of like overwhelming? but at the same time blocking themselves from, okay, like how do I respond to that? What is a middle ground that people could follow, but also to be open to that road? Because I think they are open to it, but it comes pretty direct and overwhelming, you know?
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Yeah. The take would be to spend some time reflecting on what are the key stories of your life that you're willing to share. So something last week, just draw on something. People feel like, oh, this answer has to be the best. You're asking to care, but you're not asking to like hold me accountable. So if I say, I don't know, last week I went for a crazy long walk in Ijsseldijk here in the forest. Great, well that sounds exciting. Maybe you think, oh, he's into health and fitness, you know, he's an interesting guy, rather than just like, oh, I don't know, I watch Netflix.
Yeah.
So draw on stories and events in your life, but I think as people build this, they often get stumped. So I use these types of questions all the time in my classes. They're impromptu questions, and they should jog memories. So you can practice this. So ask ChatGPT or something to give you 20 questions daily, send you a reminder, organize it digitally. Good. Question of the day, what makes you smile? Question of the day, where will you be in 5 years? Question of the day, what excites you about the coming week? Whatever it is. And now the practice is to think, story, and then share that story. Share what comes to your mind. That's authentic. Not go, oh, I don't know, what excites me about next week? Goodness, you know. And I've had people in classes say, you know, what makes me smile? Going outside. So you also have to think about the quality of that answer.
Yeah.
What does going outside mean? Oh, I love being outside in nature, especially in grassed areas and places where there's like the forest canopy covers the pathway.
Be really kind of like vivid in the details, kind of like you know, the ability to absorb. I think that's such a trait that often people nowadays forget. Like, you know, many of my friends, they say like if you watch a movie, you are so immersed and you can tell exactly every little detail that happened. How come? Because you seem so excited, so
it's memorable.
Like, exactly. And I tell like, I don't want to miss it. Like I want things to touch me emotionally, physically, mentally, whatever. Like it moves me, right? Because I think that's also part of what makes life so beautiful. And there's not a change what I'm looking for, something to really gain out of it. But if I'm going to a place or the other, also in Vienna, I'm here for only a week. This is the second time I'm here in 3 years now. And I'm mind blown once again by what the city has to offer. I was just talking to Samuel here, cameraman, lovely guy. And just the place Vienna, like with the river bedding, the trees, the birds, like everything, like the small little details, it is worth noticing. And if you don't, some people will miss it, Like I always tend to say that grace is just like sunlight. It's available for everybody, but only the people who open their eyes will see it. Just as I think how it works with small things that make life worth living for, especially with emotions too, because I think emotions can be quite scary and daunting if you don't understand them. And I think that is coming to my next question. Traditionally I think we're also maybe taught culturally to suppress emotions in a corporate world, which is, to me, I have many points to argue in that sense, and also quite some funny examples to share with you. But many of us that in sharing so, it is unprofessional and strange to do that, especially in the corporate world. Now, how can we flip that narrative and also use these bottled up emotions so that we do not overshare, but we're still listening to our feelings?
Well, let's start with the definition of emotional intelligence. So 6 Seconds is the organization that I worked with, and they describe it as blending thinking and feeling to make optimal decisions. So if we're making any decision, and we could look at this as a scientific experiment. You could go in and talk to C-suite people, talk to managers. Okay, they've got the logical side, the rational side, but then they might say, well, my gut feeling is telling me. Well, what's that? A gut feeling is a series of emotions. So people confuse emotional intelligence with being emotional, with crying at work. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about being able to recognize when I walk into a room of people, what's the mood and the feeling here? Is this a day that I need to inspire my group? Do I need to reprimand my group? Do I do something in between? And how can I use that appropriately? So I think the corporate world has emotions there, but they don't label them as emotions. And particularly in male-dominated environments, in countries, perhaps like Austria, for instance, where emotions are not kind of taken care of, is where we might see the biggest challenges to allow people to share. Because of course people do. And people wonder why book presentations are boring. Because people aren't allowed to share the emotions of the moment. People say to me, well, how can I present the second quarter sales figures of my company if I'm a sales guy and not, to do it well? Well, how do you feel about those results? Are they good, they bad, in between? Are there any stories in the last quarter that you want to highlight about some of the colleagues that have created the sales results or the lack of? Then share that, not as like a shopping list of things, but bring some enthusiasm, bring some stories, bring some magic. That doesn't mean it's all high and happy when the results are poor. If the results are poor, we reflect that, but then maybe we turn that to say, well, next quarter we're going to. Like you said before, what excites me about the next quarter's sales opportunities. That's emotions coming through. So thinking and feeling blended to make optimal decisions. So we can say, okay, which emotions can I share? I'm not sharing that I'm nervous. I'm not sharing that I'm overwhelmed. Unless I am having that one-on-one with my boss and say, I feel really overwhelmed right now. Not, you're giving me too much work. That's the wrong approach. I am feeling overwhelmed. I need some support.
Do you think that works a similar approach when people are dealing with things that happen in their personal lives? Because one thing is the corporate world where things may be quite hectic with the amount of projects you may be getting or the tasks you're getting assigned or the responsibilities that you have taken on. But let's say none of them matters in this case, and people maybe, family members ill, they need to take care of someone. Maybe there's a friend out there that might have encountered something that affects you too, and you're really emotional, sentimental about that, and it affects you so much that when you go there, it's a lot. You start crying, because I've had people, not a joke, like they tell me this and they feel that they need to be kind of like sorry for the company that it happened, whereas I think like it is so allowed to feel that, but also they struggle with the, where is the sweet spot of sharing that emotion, because at some point you cannot hold it back anymore. You know what I mean?
It'll come out in your body language.
Exactly. Do you think people should kind of like apply that same approach, or is there a different approach when dealing with personal items, maybe in your own life, that you are going to bring to the corporate world? Like, what's your take on that?
Emotions aren't based on where you are. So emotions are there always. Emotions are data. Emotions bring messages. So if you're feeling things in your personal life, for sure you're taking them into your professional life, and vice versa. So when you finish your professional day, go home, maybe you spend 10 minutes before walking in the door to your family. Am I grounded? Am I present? Am I here? Am I doing some breathing? Have I let go? I'm lucky that my work is an hour away, so I have a drive of about an hour to maybe listen to a podcast, put on some music, just sit in silence sometimes as I drive, and just allow the emotions of the moment to pass. But during COVID, during remote work days, I might be on a stressful call or in a meeting that doesn't go so well. I walk out the door and I'm in my family environment. So again, maybe you need to take a few minutes just to scan the body, center yourself, and this is emotional intelligence. This is using your emotions to be more aware, more intentional, and more purposeful.
What was your last emotional experience when walking into the corporate world or a business meeting, and how did you deal with it?
In a positive way, you mean?
Both. Could be both. Maybe something that was too extreme or overwhelming, and don't have to go into any details, but maybe just the approach itself.
Well, I gave a workshop on Wednesday at a company that I've never been to. The CEO of the company came to give a pep talk beforehand. So, I got there early, I prepared myself, I saw the room, I saw where I was working for that morning with this group of people. And I also brought in thinking, okay, what can I bring to this group of people? So the emotions were good because I was delivering my content. I knew I could add value. I know where I can bring value to people and get more out of them individually. So it's not just a stand and deliver situation. I'm bringing my coach approach to things, and I'm curious, as you said before, about what do these people need. So I can bring in all that and still feel a little bit nervous over here that will it go well enough. Now, the workshop went very well. The client was pleased and happy. I got to meet the CEO there of the business. She gave an inspiring speech as well. So it was a great morning for these people to really build on that moment. Again, what do they leave with? Like Maya Angelou's quote about how you make people feel. What feeling do you want to leave people with? So in those corporate environments where I'm going in, I'm thinking about that. In my classroom, I'm thinking about that. So people can recognize that they are this Wi-Fi, as we said before, so they can send in those emotions. Now they may not get them back, but they may get other versions that they can pay attention to, and the mirror neurons start to go off, and the belly starts to feel awkward over here. What's happening here? This is interesting. So paying attention to these emotions says, okay, is this an environment I can change today or not? So some meetings, they're tense and they remain tense. So I might shut down a little bit. I might just take a step back and say, okay, how do I protect myself here? I don't want to say something I might regret, or be overly sensitive here. Where do I draw the line? And that then I can pull myself back a little bit as well.
And when is that line for you exactly? When do you say like, hey, now is the time I need to protect myself from whatever that is that you may be presenting or maybe feeling in that moment? What is for you the standard that you're upholding yourself to so that you feel that you're still safe and vulnerable, but still can present yourself in a way you would like to?
Well, I think it depends on who else is in the room and what the ratio is. If it's me versus 10 people, I've got no chance. But if I have 3 or 4 people on my side, or maybe 6 who aren't, then okay, maybe I can work with the group emotions of the 5 of us to alter or change. Maybe we ran at loggerheads, and so you say, right, we have to part from here. But it's about recognizing what opportunity do I have. But if I'm the leader, then I get to set the agenda. So I'm very conscious of that, and then building those close personal connections. I'm reminded of another book by Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, where he really talks about the emotional bank account. And this is recognizing that with each person, we're making deposits. And we're also having withdrawals as well. So if I do say something harshly, or I'm not fully emotionally aware in that day, or vice versa, I might withdraw a little bit from that person. So it's about those boundaries again. And it'll depend on the level of relationship. So if I've invested a lot, then I might really still be there, even if there's a lot of tension. But if I haven't invested a lot, I say, well, okay, I'm going to put up that wall and protect myself a bit earlier.
Yeah, definitely. Because one thing that I'm seeing, get you back to so often is that I noticed that there's a pattern where you're not making about you when you're doing something that is meaningful to others. So you're always seeing like, what is the value for them? What can I do for them? How would they feel after I visited, So you make it less about you, which I also think is such a big part of why, if you're stepping in a room, also gains a lot of confidence. Now, in your talks, and for what I've been following on LinkedIn of you as well, is that you emphasize a lot on soft skills, right? So the question that I had on that is that, previously, if you remember the conversation that we had online, you showed me around like 30 soft skills, right? What do you think are 3 soft skills that are not a lot talked about in today's world for the younger generation, and how can we incorporate them in our own life to improve our own emotional home?
The first one would be understand. So in this rubric that you can share with your viewers, it's freely downloadable, it's a Springer book. The first one is understanding of social realities. So that is, in effect, social intelligence. Now that soft skill is being able to walk into a room, recognize who's there, not how do I maximize my value here, but how do I play the game. And I think a lot of young people say, well, I don't want to work full time, or I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. Well, you have to do certain amounts of that.
You have to do something, yeah.
You have to do something. Unless you have a golden spoon and you have all the money you need in life, you will have to do something. And so you have to play the game. You can't say, well, that's who I am, and otherwise I'm not authentic. But the environment that you put yourself in, you have to work with. So, going into a new workplace, what's the dress standard? What's the behaviors? What are the regular cultural factors here that I can understand? Who are my allies? Who are my enemies? Or who are my frenemies? Or whatever, is in between. It's not that we have to make those conscious judgments, but we need to recognize the social situation. If you walk into a club, and there's a certain type of music being played and people are dancing in a certain kind of way, you don't walk in and suddenly do some weird chicken dance or some other Macarena or whatever.
Could be.
But you could be, but you then look like the weirdo in the corner. So if you're a smart person, you will say, right, cool, I'll just fit in, and then maybe I'll do some cool stuff, and if I want to stand out, then, that next song, that's my song, and I can break out.
Gradually kind of like move on.
Gradually move in. So it's the same in a social situation. How's the game being played, and then how do I go in? So when I go into a shop and someone says, Grüß Gott, I don't immediately go, Grüß Gott, and I go about my business. I've adapted myself to that. But that's social reality. What is before me? That's a really important one of the 30. I mean, on there's things like cultural intelligence, emotional intelligence, flexibility is probably another one. It's very closely tied to adaptability. Adapting is about adapting to different situations. Flexibility is about, well, where can I just bend a little bit, like almost like physical flexibility as well. But it's this idea of, you know, how can I make the best of this situation? Where can I flex just that little bit as well? Now, of the 30, the last one I would suggest, thinking about the rubric in my mind here, is digital literacy. So we all think, okay, we can use a phone, that makes us digitally literate. But what I found exciting and interesting about that soft skill, digital literacy is about your use of technology in your life and being aware of that currency, for good or for worse, you know, for good or bad. So what I mean is, it's not just saying, yeah, I know how to use a mobile phone, but, you know, I know how to use all types of online software for conference calls, Zoom, Google Meet, Teams, and so forth. Because these days, chances are, any client that you have, any new company you go into, you may have to learn a new piece of software. And there's other kind of digital components, you know, integration. You see today people young people I think are well ahead when it comes to, you know, using Notion or these kinds of platforms that can create content, move content. It's like when I watch my kids playing computer games, building Minecraft, they're like, and suddenly things appear before my eyes, you know. They've grown up with that, but recognize too that not everyone who's older has had that experience.
Yes.
I am old enough to have gone through an analog childhood into a digital adulthood, and being an early adopter of tech, I do love that. But I like the fact that digital literacy teaches us, okay, well, what's coming next? And a lot of people are using AI for very basic reasons, me too, to an extent, but I think the younger generation ought to be applying what they're doing. Because, you know, now companies who are run by older Generation X boomers are saying, cool, how do we maximize the AI value for shareholders? So they cut out the jobs, but where are the people who know how the AI works? Probably the younger people. So if they can learn those tools and have that literacy, also for what's coming next. So when I read that, I was excited enough to buy for my birthday the MetaQuest 3S headset. I did, yeah. And
congratulations.
Because I thought, well, this is a technology that maybe becomes more mainstream with glasses and things like this in 10 years' time. And I have a younger son who's 13 who's interested in game design. So, hey, let's get him on that. Maybe he can develop thoughts around how's the future of that going to look. Right now he loves his Steam Deck more than anything else, but in time that technology is available to him. I want him exposed to that so that in his future he can say, yeah, I know about the limitations of that, or this is where we could push this.
We almost have to do a separate interview on the future of AI and where it's going, because there are so many things that are cool right now.
I'm not the expert there, but it's just my thought about
no, definitely. Like I agree. There are so many things, but to stay a little bit on topic here, you talk also a lot of how you take responsibility for your communication. Now, how do we take responsibility for our own communication?
With, okay, what am I doing today? I thought about these clothes that I'm wearing for you, because this is what we're doing. But I also thought, well, I can't come in here in a t-shirt and jeans, because you're asking me as a lecturer and coach. I'm playing the role. This is my costume, you might say. So then I might think about, today I did some warm-ups vocally, so again, how's my voice sounding? So these are very small daily activities that you could take. Then I went to the coffee shop, had a bit of a chat in German with the lady there, but had a nice experience. Then got here, exercised, moved my body a little bit. So each of these little things build up to that sort of communication platform that I might have. But then also recognize my cloud. What am I bringing in? So if I'm going into a meeting, this is probably a good way to apply this. Okay, what's the topic of the meeting? Where can I bring value? Where do I need to brush up on the agenda and what's being spoken about so I'm clear? You know, it's Jeff Bezos there's a book by Carmen Gallo it's called the Bezos Blueprint, where he describes what Jeff did during Amazon during his reign as CEO. He would have reading room, because most people come into a room, someone will say, right, did everyone read the report? Yes, I'm a good employee, I read the report, knowing full well I didn't read the report. So he knew that, and he would get executives to read the report. He'd had reading room for 10 minutes before discussion. What a time saver that is. Because you get 45 minutes into the meeting and then you realize actually you didn't read it, he half read it, he's got other ideas, he's not even attending, he's somewhere else in his mind, whoever is in the meeting. And so therefore, you have to make sure that, again, how do I set up the circumstances to prepare in that way? So I can be a good player of my communication and a good team player by doing that preparation. Not because I want to dominate, because I want to be prepared and professional.
Exactly.
And so, for younger people, get the notes, ask the questions, write stuff down on a piece of paper. What are the 3 questions that you want to ask? What are the key stories that you want to get across? Or if you have to give a short introduction, what are you going to say about yourself? Knowing that there's chances are we'll have to talk about what we did on the weekend or those small talk conversations that people don't like. So don't go in just blind and sort of sitting there and waiting to see what happens. So the empowerment part for your responsible communication says, what can I do to contribute positively to the situation? And it's like I'm a martial artist. I've got all of my tools and my techniques, and then I'm ready. Or a tradesman with a toolbox full of stuff. I'm ready. How do I now proceed?
As you were talking about the box, I think that's the last, also in wrapping up the interview, because it's been a blast already. But you talked about having a gesture box. Could you maybe tell to the audience what a gesture box is and how to use it?
Yeah, so you've seen us today using the box. The box is basically from your shoulders down to your hips. So if you're standing up to give a presentation, you want to make sure that one hand is in the box at all times. This will help you to sort of take control of the speaking environment. So if I'm speaking, I'm less likely to be interrupted by someone when I'm using my hand. Now I can choose an open gesture, I could choose a pointed gesture, I could choose a more direct gesture, I could do karate chops. I've got a whole range of choices. So when I'm speaking, I'm making sure that my hands are in the box. And that's what I've been doing throughout the interview. So if people watch back and think, what gestures was David using? Now I'm using gesture in combination with words, which again affects the vocal tone. And we're just freestyling here. So I'm bringing in all the elements together to sort of make that point. Now some of these I've practiced when I've said thinking and feeling to make optimal decisions. That's what I do every time I say it. That for me seems to resonate with people. They get it. So there's certain gestures that you might say, right, when I say this word, I'm going to use this gesture. And then, of course, it goes well into then that gesture psychology. I was made aware, for instance, in one of my videos, I did this gesture, which is okay in our language, or maybe in English, or maybe 0. If I say I've got 0 things to do. But I learned through a colleague that in Brazil, that's a rude gesture. But I don't have many Brazilians in my network that I know about consciously. But of course, now that I know that, I can either teach that, I can recognize that, I could use I've got no, 0, 0, or 0. I can make another choice. So again, I can think about, who am I? So, but all this happens inside the box.
And inside the box, it feels like you can, pick and extract certain gestures that you maybe need in the moment. Of course, you need to practice, definitely. Yeah. But from what audience have already seen so far, they can maybe copy something or mirror it. Yeah. Because indeed, you were saying like a karate chop, maybe in a proper environment, of course. Sure. But I think that is, invaluable, because to me it seems almost like this mystery box where if you consciously tap into that, you know what to do in that moment, because as you said, kind of like your mind-body aligns also with your vocal tone, and then everything, like the dots connect. You know what I mean? That's how it feels like. At least, when you were speaking, it dawned on me that, the moment when you were combining all of these skills and knowledge into this almost kind of like last piece of the puzzle that made a lot of sense. And now I understand, especially with all of that you've learned, it comes together in this one final piece, which to me is the gesture box. But it all affects each other. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's not one thing, it's not only the gesture. It is if you point the gesture, then also your vocal tone may be also kind of like an effect of that, and now it works seamlessly in harmony. Yes. It syncs. Yes. It's incredible. So David, last question, because we already came down to the final one, and this is something I always love to ask you. It's a long question, but I try to initiate very slowly. If you can give one final piece of advice for the rest of your life, and it can only be a single piece, for the younger generation that will have the most impact on the quality of their lives, what would that be?
So a piece of advice I would give to the younger generation coming through, it's to follow the green lights of your life. My late grandfather said to me, he had a very strong career, he retired early and built a fortune for himself, but he always said, I followed the green lights. So where are and a green light, imagine we're driving a car, a green light is a moment where we're not hitting a red, we're not hitting a closed door, the open door, walk through it, go. Follow the green light says, where are my opportunities in my life? So at 23, the opportunity came to start singing. And I met, through a coincidence, a singing teacher. I didn't have to find 10 teachers, I found my teacher. I coincidentally followed the green light, got into Sydney Conservatorium, got into Opera Australia, got into, progressed as a professional. Yeah, compounded. Yes. You know, I won awards, I won this, I won that, I was given this. It's sort of like a meteoric rise, but it was all green lights. Then when I got to Austria, the green light changed. It was like an amber light. Now maybe I could have kept pushing and going, but I also had to recognize, suddenly I was a little David, now Australian singer, in a big European pool of people, changing voice type to high baritone without repertoire and years of experience and nobody, no connections. But suddenly, when I pivoted, I had green lights in language instruction. So before I finished my CELTA, I had a job with the language company. Then I'm going into corporates, more. Suddenly I get a contact who introduces me to where we met first 3 years ago at the university. And so that came about, like I didn't have to do anything almost to get that job. You know, they're like, come, wow, green light, follow the green light. I was in external lecture going, wow, lecturing's pretty cool. It's like performing. I like this, you know. Again, more green lights. Green. So if I tried to be now a Helden tenor or a high baritone or whatever, maybe I could practice for hours at the piano over here, next to us here in this room and use this space, but I might still hit the red lights. And so I've never forgotten this advice, because when I'm sitting and reflecting, thinking about my direction, or do I close my business? Do I take on this collaboration? Is this client going to lead somewhere? You know, what could this mean? I don't know. But I'm willing to kind of put it over to maybe the universe, to some sort of source, to a higher power, whichever faith you might believe in. Sure, throw it over. Maybe it's just your intuition. Maybe you know, I saw this great quote that said, like, your soul knows where it needs to go, your intuition is guiding you, and your emotions are telling you where to go. So when, you know, to really nail down not just some esoteric, you know, green light theory, follow the green lights would mean you meet someone, you get a spine tingle, you get some kind of emotional shift, pay attention. For me, driving down the road, if I'm listening to a song and maybe I have to sing that song. Maybe that's the song, you know, if I'm going into which song should I sing at the church next Sunday, listen to a few songs. That one hit me. Okay, what's that about? I don't know, pay attention, go sing it. When I've gone and sung those songs, it's been some of my best singing. And people go, wow, that was amazing. So you meet someone at an event, you know, a startup event or a working network. Don't be like a sniffer dog, but just be there, and maybe you meet a few people, follow it up. Maybe there's a green light there as well. The way I got my job at the current university I'm at was through 1 hour of coaching. Through a collaboration that I have here in the city, doing that, and then the person wrote to me 6 months later and said, I think you'd be great for this new course that we have. Great, I've been doing that over at the other university. I can come over and do it for you. Great. And that, again, green light.
Well, you also have to accept the green lights, right?
Of course, and you have to work at it. Yes. So it's not like I'm sitting back going, oh, look, green lights are coming. Exactly. Isn't that great? I'm still bringing value. I'm still bringing communication. I'm still turning up with all the things we've talked about today. I'm still hyper aware of how can I bring a positive effect. So I'm not just trying to be a motivational speaker or a guru of sorts, but it's about saying, well, how do I bring out the best in people? You know, I say to people, I know how to speak English, I'm here to help you. But I want you to be self-determining your learning That's something I really believe in now in this phase of my life, so that you can get the best out of yourself. And then eventually, like you did, you got back in touch and said, hey, I really enjoyed our class. Can we do a podcast?
Yeah.
Hey, we're here. Now, there may be a green light. Maybe someone out there is watching and they go, cool, I want David to come and do my TEDx event.
Yeah.
I'm there. You know, you never know where it goes. And if not, it's been a wonderful experience to talk to you, to hear your questions, to see how you're trying to help people and to grow your listenership and viewership as well. You know, to help people on that adventure. Why not? I've had many people help me with those green lights.
Yeah.
So the green light comes through a connection. It comes through someone. And so you can then, at my stage of life now, start to hand that on and hand that back to people coming through. And if people are paying attention and are fully aware and intentional, then that purpose starts to emerge, you might say. So like we're walking a pathway and the sun comes out and the rain clouds and we see, oh my God,
it almost reveals itself.
Here is my path. And it will have twists and turns, but the North Star is there.
Exactly, David. Thank you so much. You have incredible advice.
You're very welcome.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. And guys, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe only if you feel that this is valuable, because I hope it was really valuable to you. And otherwise, I would see you in the next video. And goodbye. Have an awesome day. Cool.
Cool.
Cool. David.